Can you hear me all right? Okay, sounds good. Hi, my name is Brooke Szajda. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Richmond. I worked on this paper with Professor M. Charity right there. Um, and so, yeah, so GameGoogle is a search engine for specifically mechanics in video games. So sort of a way to search within video games rather than across them. So when you're searching for video games, whether it be through Google, ChatGPT, or a games database, excuse me, you typically get results based off of genre, title, or popularity. So, for example, if you search basketball in a games database, you would get results like NBA 2K series, or maybe Mario Hoops 3-on-3. I'm sorry, my throat's dry. But if you're a game scholar, developer, educator, and you're searching for mechanics within video games, these search results aren't really that helpful. So GameGoogle aims to, find instances of a basketball within a video game. So here is sort of like a imaginary search result. So you've got games with specific genres, and you've got games like Little Big Planet 2 that have mini games within the games. So here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like the basketball mini game in Little Big Planet 2, and also in Thief, there's an Easter egg about like a basketball stadium, which you can't really find with normal Google searches. So here's an actual search result from GameGoogle, and I searched Stephen King for no particular reason. But so I'll explain the results and how we got them. So God of War 2, one of the CG directors is named Stephen. And in Silent Hill 3, it's directly based off of Stephen King's novella The Mist. Madden NFL 19, it's just one of the player names you can choose. And in Borderlands 2, there's like an Easter egg based off of the Dark Tower series that Stephen King wrote. So just an example of what GameGoogle can find within video games that Google might not provide. So there are a lot of ways where people can identify themes within games that are very niche. So I'm going to start off with the woke content detector. There's this Steam group where people will play games and then rate how woke they are, just in case you're really worried about that. And so somebody made it into a website. And so if you want, you can search a woke games detector right now, search your favorite game, see how woke it is. And then there's also Can You Pet the Dog, which is a Twitter page where it's just like video games where you can pet a dog. I love that. And there are also other academic game search engines like GameNet, GameSpace, GameGlobs, GameTree. There's more. There's a lot of them. But they typically search for themes in games and similarity between games rather than within the game. All right, so how did we do this? We grabbed titles of from the last 50 years, the top 50 games from a website called Glitchwave. And then we use those titles to get game manuals from VIMS. There's a manual project on that website, very lovely. We got stuff from Steam Community, IGN guides, and game FAQs. And then we processed those and tokenized them using NLTK and Spacey libraries. And then we created a database with tables. So game data is like the basic metadata. And then the inverse word lookup are the nouns and verbs that we extracted from these manuals, guides, and all that fun stuff. So the system design, I sort of went over that. So this is the game data table. And so far we have 4,500 games, and there are 120,000 searchable keywords. And if you saw in the Stephen King example, I said there was a game where like one CG director was named Stephen. And that's because I used the default search ranking. And so the default search ranking just searches if there's Stephen or King. while the exact keywords would search for Stephen and King and both. So Stephen King itself, they both have to be present in the data set. And I think the rest are sort of self-explanatory, alphabetical game rating, release year. And then we conducted a user study. So we asked people, like, say, one of the examples is bike. What game do you think of when you think of bikes? And we rated those results in this graph based on the games that they gave us and if they were in our data set. And so as you can see, they were all present. We had fire, which was a little mishap because fire can be used as like a verb instead of like a noun in that sense. So like people were saying Fire Emblem, which yeah, Fire Emblem is a game you could think of with fire, but our database was sort of thinking it in the sense of like, okay, if there's fire in a manual, it's most likely like you have a fire power in the game, or there's some sort of like fire magic happening within the game. That was the only one that there was like a little bit of iffiness around. So, and then gathering the data, there were some problems because so Pokemon has the accent in the E, and the code didn't like that. So that was sort of annoying, but it's all good now. And then some people, when they're writing game guides, they don't like to write the whole game title. So the 100-line Last Defense Academy is a pretty long title. So some games would just, or some game guides would just put the 100-line. That's not really helpful when you're trying to get that data. And then for Final Fantasy, sort of same thing with the Roman numerals versus 7. That was sort of a mismatch there. And also with remakes, deciding which content for which game would go and like the database was kind of annoying. And that's also with like the Batman Game of the Year edition. How do we sort of process that? So those were the challenges with just getting the data set because the data was sort of messy. And so this is an example of, or this is a direct screenshot of a game result. So you have the result page and then you can like click on the games. And so this is, I searched up King, and the first result was Conquest of Camelot, The Search for the Grail. So right now you can see on the bottom, we've got King screenshots, and that's because we eventually want to be able to show the exact moment in the game where this noun or verb is present. And so hopefully in the future, if you search up King and then press on Conquest of Camelot, you'll find that King Arthur is actually who you play. So more on future work. We want to be able to expand our data set for mobile games and indie games because having those very underground games can really make our data set more rich. And also, as I said, we wanted to be able to have pictures of the moment in the game where that noun or verb is present. And so we're thinking of using long plays to gather that information. And also tip of my joystick, I think I had that in a previous slide. And so basically, if you don't know what the Reddit is, it's a forum where you can say, hey, I remember this game, but I don't really remember like what it's called. Can somebody help me find it? And so this isn't a post from that exact community, but it's a very similar post that describes the problem clearly. So this person is saying, hey, I really like this mini game in a game, but it's temporary and I love it and I want to play it outside the game. And it's very, the name is not on the tip of my tongue right now. I should really use that website, but if you know what the game is, it's that right there. And so hopefully in the future, we can test our website against these queries or requests in the forum and see if we can actually help find those games. And so here's the link to the website. We're having a little problems with it earlier, so I hope it works. But if there are problems, you can hopefully find us at the demo. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Finished on time. Congratulations.
Okay.
So full 5 minutes for questions.
All right.
But then it's. Like somewhere like. But there's also a lot where it's like, I don't want games where kind of that one thing to say in our class. There's like a lot of things that are not really.
Yeah, so there were a few papers that we read before making this about like how to define a game mechanic in a game. And it was just sort of all over the place. And we decided that, using nouns and verbs from manuals are probably going to give us or yield the best results for what we wanted. But I completely get it because sometimes games, like, they have these weird names for mechanics that it's like, okay, it's hard to extract that from a game when it's so unique. I hope that answers your question.
Excellent thought. There's another one earlier this week after the fire. Pretty good. Clearly, the fire up was it doesn't prevent it as a fire, right? But what do you do when there's an event, lose one of them? There's something on the basketball monster, some reason that has nothing to do with that. It's fire. Fire. How would you begin to split it?
Yeah, so I mean, that is a problem. And so this was sort of just a proof of concept right now, but I mean, in the future, when we, try to expand the data set, when we come across those problems, that'll be annoying. So no answer right now, but hopefully got one in the future. Any other? Oh,
I love the project. I think I was immediately thinking of like using, but there's a particular well, do you think that like taking code eventually might open things up like partners and where you might be able to start
I think that's a really cool idea, but just imagining trying to do that is like really daunting right now. But I would love to talk to you about that because I really love that idea. So thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.